Welcome everyone to this week's IPLD sync meeting. It's March the 14th at 2022, and as every 2 weeks we talk about IPLD and what happened in the IPLD ecosystem, and everyone is free to join. And yeah, so we give updates and then we discuss any open agenda items there might be. So we have this meeting, and afterwards after we've done with discussing things, we stop the live stream, but you're free to hang out to discuss other things, discuss off-topic things, and so on. And usually I get started with myself, but last week I didn't really do much IPLD work, so I don't have any update. Well, I would have an update, but I want to give it next time, I think, because then it will be way better. So first on the list is Danielle.
Cool. So I did miss the previous call. So this is roughly an update for the last 4 weeks, but the update from the 2 weeks before isn't really that different from these past 2 weeks. So I've continued to help the GraphSync people use IPLD Prime. I haven't heard anything from them in the past couple of weeks in terms of problems or blockers. So I'm assuming that everything is going smoothly so far. I don't think they've shipped yet, but I think they've started merging things into the Lotus repos. But Rod can correct me there if I'm wrong. I've been fuzzing IPLD Prime, especially the parts that GraphSync is now going to start using heavily, which is DAG, CBOR, bind node, and the schema packages. It's already found a handful of bugs. Most of them are in the schema packages, which is not terribly exciting because GraphSync has a static schema. So as long as that works, it's fine. But it did find one bug in bind node with unions. When you decoded them, they could be empty, and then it would just be like, okay, I can decode an empty union, which shouldn't happen. It's also found a bunch of bugs in DAG CBOR, like it will happily accept input that has trailing bytes that it doesn't care about. And I don't think that should be valid, but I'm not sure how to fix it because I've never poked at the codec implementation. And also Massey, one of the, I forgot the team's name, one of the data systems people, he was asking me, how can I use any in the any feature from IPLD schemas in store the index? And they're using IPLD Prime CodeGen right now. And I told him any is implemented, but not in CodeGen. So I told him, if it's easy enough, try using bind node. So he's looking at that. It was easy enough to switch over. But now he's running into issues with typed links, which is some struct that points to some other struct or schema type. But that link shouldn't just go to the any prototype. It should go to a specific prototype. And I think CodeGen does this well with, what is it called? The interface. Typed link node, which is like a hint for the prototype that should be used when you have an ampersand foo bar as opposed to just link, which is generic. So I've linked to the issue here because I'm explaining myself horribly, but TLDR, I might need to prioritize making this work somehow in bind node because I think it's blocking Massey. And it might be easier than making any work in CodeGen. But anyway, this is just me giving them a helping hand. It's not a blocker for my work, as far as I know. And that's it.
Thank you. Next on my list is Rod.
Look, as I said, I haven't done a whole lot in the last couple of weeks. I've been unwell for most of the time, but been doing some bind node stuff in we're to data. What is it? Data transfer. It's a data transfer sits above GraphSync, and there's these layers that sit above data transfer. And the interesting thing about the stacking of these pieces is that for IPLD is that we have these layers of any that get propagated. So GraphSync has these any's in its schema, message schema, and data transfer will take one of those any's and turn it into its own type. And then it does the same thing for its consumers. So its consumers will take an any and then turn it to its own custom type. So we have 3 layers of unwrapping these types into specific schema Go types, and which is, that's workable. You just use bind node to unwrap them, or in some cases you can just manually like pick an integer out because the any is supposed to be an integer. But I've been thinking a lot about how one might go about implementing something that stacks them together, or flattens the stacking so that you can do a parse in one like in one take. You just parse the whole thing out. So and I'm not sure exactly what it'll take, but I'm thinking about some approaches with the at setup time, pushing all the schemas into one, or something, or maybe pushing all the prototypes into one space. But anyway, it's an interesting problem. Not critical, but it might be worth solving because it's probably not going to be the most unique instance of it. But anyway, aside from that, haven't done much else because just had a couple of weeks of issues going on here, including being unwell. So that's it.
Thanks. And next on my list is Rangemove.
Hello. Yeah, so last week, sadly, a bunch of other stuff came up, so I didn't make a huge amount of progress, but I'm working on a checklist for kind of people creating IPLD implementations based on WarpForks design. And I'm just kind of filling that out and also working on general docs updates, like adding stuff to the glossary, like what reify means, so that folks can just kind of link to that from the checklist. So I'm hoping to have like maybe an initial drafts done this week, and then some potential next steps we were talking about is maybe making a tool for authors to kind of like see where they are in their implementation relative to the checklist, and maybe even print out a fancy markdown table that they can just like include in their docs. But we're still kind of figuring that out. Also, I had a call today for a related thing with Lytle from the stewardship team, talking about the IPFS gateway. And we've kind of started talking about maybe speccing out an IPLD, like /IPLD/ addition to the gateway, and what that would mean, and kind of how we can look at traversals and patching and all the other stuff that you have for like the Go or RPC APIs. And part of that is also hoping to get IPLD protocol handlers down the line. So just as you can use IPFS to link to files and directories, it'd be cool if we could use IPLD to link to arbitrary data. So very early stages there, probably months of bike shedding before we have anything at all. But so far it looks like there's potential interest, maybe. Yeah, so that's me.
Thanks. Next one is Eric.
Hello. So I think I've got some news about IPLD patch that didn't swing around in time for the last public meeting. We've got a draft of IPLD patch. There's a couple of links to both PR that's spec and fixtures in the IPLD/IPLD meta repo. And there's also an implementation in the Go world. And they're at least alpha tier, I think. They're open for review if anyone wants to check them out. There is working code and fixtures that are connected to it. It's mostly based on pretty much taking the JSON patch RFC and running with it. It's a reasonable RFC, so let's go. There's a couple caveats to that and small details that are mildly divergent or slightly strictified. For example, we have stronger opinions about ordering. Like ordering must be preserved in IPLD. If not, then you have like determinism problems, right? So some of the fixtures in the JSON patch RFC are noodled a little bit to make them more order preserving. Stuff like that. There's more details in the PR. The implementation of this, a couple of remarks on it, is also still pretty alpha. We've got tests for these things that are in the fixtures, but like that's what you see is what you get so far. And I've sort of shoved it off into its own package. So at the moment, the dependency tree has patch like pretty far down. Nothing in the core depends on patch. Patch is more like depends on traversal, depends on data model. So as a result of that, we could, at least at the moment, hypothetically have like more than one different competing patch system in the libraries too. I don't actually have a draft of such a thing, but like it means we're not super committing to this yet. But we'll see, because I know somebody else in the room has taken this idea already and kind of run with it and said, hey, what if we use this as part of some other APIs to make them more declarative and do more stuff? And like, I don't know, but it's a cool idea. I don't actually have something to show for this because I haven't bothered to take a camera to my whiteboard, but just so people know, I've also been redrawing the what is IPLD PNG lately, just repeatedly redrawing it and trying to come up with a slightly better formulation, trying to fix a couple communicational bugs in the last generation. We went around on the one that's ended up in the current website for quite a while. And I think, like, people can correct me if I'm misspeaking, but I think we were like 95% satisfied with the old one, but never 100, because some things about the way data model is framed next to schemas and ADLs and other things that all expose the same interface. I don't think we got that communicated clearly enough. I noticed that people keep having questions about that isomorphism. And so I keep redrawing that picture and trying to find a better way. And maybe I'll have some more drafts to show up soon. They'll probably appear as links in Matrix/Discord. And that's about it for me.
Thanks. And next one is Mozin.
Thanks. Yeah, I added a link here to the incremental updates issue that Eric created, and added lots more notes, a couple of links to prototypes using IPLD and the Hackmd ADL repo. So anyone can feel free to take a look and add more comments. I've been having some good discussions with Eric about this. So I'm gonna continue prototyping and seeing where to go next. That's it for me.
Cool, thanks. All right, so I went to all the people that have put notes in, but I know that some other people also want to say something. So now's the time. So Evan, perhaps.
I appreciate the prompt. So I guess this is a what have I been working on, but it's much less related to IPLD than I assume what everyone else has been sharing. It is potentially related. It is especially potentially related to something that Pork and I have spoken about previously. I have been building out legal and financial structuring for this thing that we're calling blue funds. Or blue funders is another term. The general idea is like there's nothing that looks like an analog of venture funding for things that are generally useful but have no mechanisms for value capture. So if you don't think you can get a profit, good luck getting venture funding. It's basically the problem that we're trying to solve. And we're solving that by first showing that we can create a structure where some people can say, like, I think I can be the equivalent or analog of an angel investor. There are things that I think should get money, and if they had money, they would be able to create great things for people, whether that's like improvements to IPLD or the equivalent of like an IPLD for insert idea here. The capital is still at the moment all coming from Protocol Labs. The hope, like one of the things that I am taking on is trying to find other places we can draw capital from for people who care about things like open source internet infrastructure. And so overall, I wanted to come here and say, like, if you have interesting ideas, even if they are ideas that you've spoken to me about before, but would still be interested in potentially pursuing getting funding, especially for something that does not take up significant time from current Protocol Labs employees. I don't want to have to fight over people's times with their bosses, but if you know of someone who could build a thing quite autonomously that would be very cool, this would be like, this is intended to be exactly that opportunity. There is a Google form link that I'll put into the notes, and you can fill that out and I can follow up with you. It's currently only open to people who have an @protocol.ai email, but if you are watching this and don't have one, or possibly because you're streaming it on YouTube or something, then my email, you can reach me at evan@protocol.ai. That works out, or reach out to me in Slack or Discord if you can find me there fairly easily. Thanks for the opportunity to chat, and let me know if you have any questions.
I have a question. So what is the main distinction between this and, say, the dev grants that you can get from Filecoin or Protocol Labs in general?
The intention is that the dev grants are more of a, I want to do a thing, can I get funding to do this? And these blue funds are, I have ideas for things that other people should do. These come with a little bit of a a conflict of interest constraint, where like, we don't want people who are getting money to fund themselves. They're specifically getting funding to pursue ideas that they aren't going to do and other people weren't going to do, but we can get those other people to do those things. So one perspective is bringing more people into the ecosystem. Another one is de-risking people who want to transition into the ecosystem and don't have the opportunity or the justification. And another perspective is we want to be able to scale the number of things we're doing faster than the number of people we currently have employed, or the number of people we think we can reasonably employ. And so there really is a push of like, let's get more things built in a less capital constrained way for a few things that are going to be impactful and are currently being neglected.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you for the explanation.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. And just to like be concrete, I think we can apply it to Rangemove, right? Where we saw all kinds of low-hanging fruit around IPLD documentation and compliance, et cetera. And a dev grant did get formulated so that we could get funds, so we could secure Rangemove's time and get funds to them. Was that, just to be clear, was that appropriate to do as a dev grant, or should we have been going at this through a Blue Fund model?
If it works as a dev grant, keep doing it as a dev grant. If it feels like you're trying to fit something that is not dev grant shaped into a dev grant shaped hole, then this is meant to be much more flexible. And so if it makes less sense as a grant and more sense as maybe like a competition or an in-person event or like a conference workshop kind of thing, or any kind of like weirder solution, like combination grant and like auxiliary event meetup where you're going to try and recruit people into this, or if you want to channel the money into like onto Gitcoin to pursue the goal, then this ends up intending to be much more flexible. But if an existing solution works, you should feel free to pursue that existing solution.
Another question, would something like an RFP make sense? Like, for instance, I've identified that indexing in IPLD could really use some B+ trees. And I've been trying to just like throw that into the ether that this is something that would be useful. Would it make sense to like put something a bit more formalized there and just be like, hey, someone should work on this? Is that kind of like the use case you were thinking?
That is absolutely a use case, yes. So
okay, well, anyone listening should hit us up and make those B+ trees happen.
And if you follow up with me, we can like spec out what that RFP could look like. It could end up as a, like, I'm not sure what the best place to advertise that would be, but we can find out, like, we can get some consensus around how much we should value that, what kind of a grant we should offer for the team that wants to pursue that, and make that happen. And yeah, this is exactly the kind of like, if you know something should exist, if you know someone else can do it, it's not quite at the priority level, then I think that this is going to be this should be an easier way to allocate capital toward those goals than we've had previously.
Cool. This is good. So just playing this, using this one in particular, right? Mauve will reach out to you, we'll get some more project, we get more project definition around this. Then from there would be some decision of like, okay, how much would we be willing to allocate towards this, to that effort? And then like, is it on Mauve to go post this different places and like also be the decider of, random person X on GitHub who did this work should now get, Y compensation? Like, what are a couple of the more mechanics? I'm just asking to make this more tangible and real for people.
Yeah, the hope would be that whoever proposed the idea can provide like clarity on like who can see what paths should be taken and what paths are the best paths to take in order to like identify a team, get funding to them. I would like Matt and I, my team, my very small team at this point, would figure out like who we would need to talk to evaluate what size grant makes sense, what size we feel good about from the like capital allocation side, and once we have that, we can provide support getting things to different venues. A lot of the I think I would expect that we wouldn't necessarily know what the best places are to advertise, but if you name things, we can help brainstorm, deploy. We have access to people on like in more marketing type roles, and we have like I can easily get things posted to the Protocol Labs Twitter or the PL Research Twitter or the IPFS Twitter, I'm sure, to the extent that that's useful. So can definitely help with things like that, but may not know whether or not that is a useful thing to do. And so it would ideally be a like very lightweight partnership with whoever proposes one of these and us, where most of the work at the end of the day is being done by people who are externally being engaged through these. All right, thank you for the questions and the thoughts, and yeah, look forward to talking to some of you. I do not have a login for Hackmd, so I'm just going to put my put the relevant link here and right here in the Zoom chat, and if someone could copy that over to those relevant. And feel free to email
it's
me.
world writable because none of us log into Hackmd for this purpose, but we can copy it too.
It says that to edit, I need to.
I don't think it should.
It says I need to sign in. I don't have any kind of. No. Okay.
Well, okay, we'll get it there somehow.
It's fighting me. Thank you.
Cool.
Cool.
That's all I
Thanks.
got.
Yeah, so the meeting notes will be posted to GitHub to be merged into the meeting things, and then I can also like ping you, and then you can edit things, because so I've tried to take notes, but basically feel free to totally edit them and like reword them and just make it right, because yeah, it's like I try my best. Anyway, cool. All right, is there anything else? Or I just saw that Johnny just joined. Do you have any updates you want to share?
No, not really. Sorry, I was lurking on the YouTube channel. I was we were doing some other stuff, but I was what piqued my interest was Mauve was talking about the /IPLD, and I think so. I commented on the issues. I think I actually presented that to Juan maybe like, gosh, 4 or 5 years ago. That wouldn't it be nice to have? So now it's nice to see that it's finally coming around. And so I think, and I think there's great use cases. I've also mostly recently just diving into UCANs for object capabilities for what we're working on at Consensus, and like for this idea of data lockers or personal encrypted data stores from the diff. So one thing I just diving into the use cases of IPLD to do that rather than JWTs. Going along with COSE signed capability systems, but it's just not quite mature enough to sort of present.
All right, thanks. All right. Does anyone else have any questions or things to discuss?
I'll just attach this real quick because I tried to Google what UCAN is, or insert search engine here, and that is spelled UCAN, and it's a spec about authorization from the Fusion Codes people. So there's some more keywords if anyone listening needs to find that.
Oh yes, yeah. User capability systems, and I think I just dove into the NFT storage or the Web3 storage. So they're using JWTs, but it's just interesting nuance as far as like how it's being signed for like basically the API key. But that those is also just lurking also on another the South by Southwest talk that is actually going on today from Filecoin about the future of object capabilities with, and I think there's a great synergy right there with IPLD.
All right. If there's nothing else, then I close the meeting. And so thanks everyone for joining, and see you. Oh, I have one more note for people in Europe. So this meeting always happens at the same UTC time. And in 2 weeks, when we meet again, most people in Europe will observe the daylight saving time. So it will be an hour later. So for the Europeans in the Central European time zone, it will, instead of 10 p.m., it will be 11 p.m. And then the meeting after, the Australians will have the fun of having it earlier. Anyway, but I will talk about this next time. So see you all in 2 weeks.